All right, so at this point in the project, we have all of our generic walls created, and let's go ahead and add some floors now, starting with the first floor. So I'm going to do this from the Foundation Plan view, and I'll launch the Basic Floor tool from the Home tab of the ribbon. And as you can see, I have the floor properties available. Right now, the Type drop-down appears to be grayed out. So I begin by clicking the Edit Type button, and there are quite a few floor types available in the drop-down here. However, let's say, for example, I wanted a generic 6-inch floor. Well, there isn't one available by default, so we'll have to create this ourselves. I'll begin by selecting the generic 12-inch floor and pressing Duplicate. Now, you're always going to want to duplicate the floor type before making any modifications, okay? Because that way, the out-of-the-box and standard Revit types never get changed. And I'm going to give this floor a name, let's say generic 6-inch, and click OK. Now I can make whatever changes I need to make to this floor type. I'll begin by clicking the Edit button next to Structure, and this lets me edit the composition of the floor. So I'm going to change the material thickness from 12 inches to 6 inches and click OK. There's a lot more customization that we could do here, but this is the only change I'm going to make for now. And as we progress further in the model, we'll continue looking at customizing elements. There are a couple very important properties to pay attention to before creating the floor. First, you must select a level for the floor. You can specify an offset. I'll use -4 inches, and you can set whether or not the floor will be room bounding. I'll leave room bounding selected as it is the default. Finally, you can also set whether you need the floor to be a structural floor or not by using this checkbox. I'm going to leave the option cleared. With the properties all set, the next step is to sketch out the floor's boundary. You can use any of the draw tools just like before, but notice this draw tool that we haven't seen while creating walls. This is the Pic Walls Tool, and it's a great tool. I highly recommend using it whenever there are walls available to pick. All you need to do to use it is to select the existing geometry, saving the trouble of having to sketch the outline again, and parametrically linking the boundary to the walls. So if you have walls to pick, you should definitely use the Pic Walls tool. Now notice this checkbox here, Extend into Wall Core. I'm going to clear it for now, okay? We're going to look at this option in the next lesson. All right, with the Pic Walls tool active, I'll select the 3 outer walls of the garage. I'll also select the interior concrete wall. I want the boundary to be created on the inside of the walls. You can use the flip arrows to flip between the inner and outer edge of the wall. If you need to, you can adjust the floor boundaries by clicking and dragging just like you saw with the walls. Or you can delete segments and use any of the other draw tools to redraw them in. Now the important thing here is I want the floor boundary to trace perfectly alongside the inside of the garage. The floor must also be a closed boundary. I'll use the Trim and Extend tool to clean this up. I'll launch the tool from the ribbon. And the Trim and Extend tool is really useful. To use it, you simply click on the elements you want to keep, and the tool trims the boundary. This is an important thing to remember when trimming and extending, all right? You keep what you click. The rest is trimmed away. So once the boundary is cleaned up, I'll click the green check to finish the floor. When I do, Revit shows a dialog box asking if I want walls to extend up to the floor. Now, whenever you get these dialog boxes, which happen fairly often, the safe answer is no. Always say no unless you're absolutely sure you want to do what the dialog box tells you. So this completes the garage floor, and if I switch to 3D view, you can see the floor there. Starting 4 inches below the first level and extending 6 inches downward. So let's continue creating the rest of the first level floors. Back in the floor plan now, and I'll again launch the Floors tool. I use a generic 6-inch floor, this time with no offset. And I'll again use the Pic Walls tool to create the boundary. Make sure Extend into Wall Core is unchecked. So the boundary here is already cleaned up, but if you need to, you can again use trim and extend again to clean up the boundary. To reiterate, when you're using trim and extend, you select the segments of the line that you want to keep. I'll click the green check to finish the floors. Revit asks me again if I want to extend walls up to the floor. I'll click no, and then let's switch to the 3D view again. So you can see the two floors we've just created, the floor in the garage and the floor in the main area. Now, if you need to edit the floor boundaries for any reason, you can click the floor to select it. You may need to use the Tab key to highlight the floor, and then select Edit Boundary on the ribbon. You can see the boundary in pink, and you can make any necessary adjustments. Now, you can edit the floor boundary from any view. If you do want to edit it, I recommend doing so from the same 2D plan view used to create the floor.